All right, in this video, we're going to be talking about weighted averages. Now, a little bit of background to what's going on, and that is, let's say if John was a student, all right? So if John was a student, and let's say for this particular class, John has 5 scores, 90, 100, 80, 70, 90. Now, if I was to just simply add all these numbers up and divide by 5, his average would be an 86, all right? So if I just simply added them all up and divided them by 5. Now, if you have been a student for more than 5 minutes, you know that in a class you have different categories. So, like for example, let's just say if this 100 here was a homework grade, okay, and then this 70 was a test grade. Most students would agree that a test score weighs more than a homework score. So what happens is this right here would be a major this would be a major assignment as opposed to homework being minor assignment. All right. So having all of these and just simply dividing it by 5, that would not take into account the fact that a test weighs much more than a homework assignment. So what we have is a situation of we have grades with different weighted with different percentages. All right. So let's kind of look at this question here. All right. So it says John, he completed his first college class, and here's the breakdown. So his test, he averaged out with a 84 in his test. His class participation ended up averaging out to a 95. Homework, and then lastly, final exam. All right. Now, pay attention to that because that's going to be very important. But let's go ahead and start answering the questions that are written. It says this: if 8 tests were given during the semester, what percentage of the final grade does each test count? Well, let's look. If you notice in the category percentage, the test makes up 40%. So 40% make up all tests. All right. But the question says if there were 8 tests, all right, how much does one test count? So if the entire test category adds up to 40%, then that means one test, I'll just simply divide it out, one test would be 5% of his overall grade. All right. Now, for the next one, it says if 5 homework assignments were given during the semester, what percentage of his final grade? Well, again, looking at his homework percentage, all of his homework grades, so all homework will equal 25%. Okay. Now, if we're looking for just what one homework assignment counts, and if there was 5 of them, very simply, like the test, we just take 25% divided by 5 assignments, and each assignment would be worth 5%. All right. Now, let's keep going. What is John's overall grade in the class? All right. So now we go back up to the actual category or the chart and start figuring some stuff out. So let me clean this up a little bit just to kind of get some stray marks out of the way. Okay. Now, the test category, he ended up having an 84 for his overall test. So all of his tests averaged together ended up being 84. But his test makes up 40%. So in order to figure out what part of it or how much of his total grade is tests, we simply do this. We do 84 and we're going to multiply it by 40%. All right. And now what you're going to get is what I call the raw score. Okay. Now I just kind of did the raw score just to kind of make it sound a little different here. So we're going to round it to 1 decimal. This ends up being 33.6. Now you do the same exact thing. 95% times 10%. And then what we have is 9.5. And then you take 90, you times it by 25%, so 90 times 425 gives you 22.5. And then lastly, do the same exact thing, 68 times 25. So 68 times 0.25 gives me 17. So to figure out his overall score, very simply, all you do, you just add up all the raw scores. So 33.6 plus 9.5 plus 22.5 plus 17 gives you an answer of it's 82.6, and we're going to round that to 83. So John's overall grade in the class ends up being 83. All right. Now, next question. It says here that Tammy is a senior in high school and he completed his first semester in AMDM. Here's a breakdown of his grades. Now, the question of, or the what makes what we just did here different from here is you have to do one quick step, or you have to go one step further and figure out the mean score. Now, the mean score is just basically the average score. Now, this is very simple because all of his test scores are right here. So all you would have to do is add all of his test scores up and then divide by 5. So 90 plus 80 plus 85 plus 75 plus 70. Divide that by 5. It ends up being 80. Now, just like what we did with the category percentage, we're just simply going to multiply them. So 80 times 0.45 gives you a raw score of 36. And you would continue this setup for the quizzes. So 90 plus 90 plus this, it gives you 410. I divide that by 5 scores, and it gives you 82. So 82 times 0.35 gives you 28.7. Now, for the performance final, there was only one grade, which means that's the mean score, because 80 divided by 1 will give you 80. 80 times this gives you 4, I believe. And then lastly, the final exam being 65. There's only one of them, so that will be a 65. And I think my electronic device froze up for a second, so I'm just going to go ahead. Oh, there it goes. 65 times 15% gives you, I'm just going to round this to 9.8. And then lastly, what you're going to do is add them all up. All right, so when you add all these numbers up, I had to walk out of the room, I had to pause the video, so I might be repeating myself. Your answer, what is Tammy's overall grade? Well, it calculates to a 78.5, but we're just going to round that to a 79 because that's the way it's going to be in the grade book. Now, the last question that you might run into, and that is, what happens, because if your eyes directly go straight to the fact that we now have question marks. Okay, so you know that this question is going to be a little different. All right, so George is a senior, and he has a chance to get an academic scholarship. He must get an A. He must get a 90 or above in order for him to be eligible for the scholarship. Now, here's the breakdown. So here's what I want you to think about, and that is this. This question here that I'm circling, this represents after the final exam. All right, so the final exam has already been given. So the final exam has already been given, and so we're calculating after the fact. The way that this question is structured, this is before. All right, so that means, and if you've been a student for more than 5 minutes, there has always been a time when you go to a teacher and go, teacher, what must I make on the final exam in order to get this grade? Okay, so this is what George is basically asking his teacher. Hey, teacher, what must I do to get a 90 in the class? Meaning, what do I have to do on the final exam? Well, if you notice, the test and quiz, we got the scores, but we don't have the mean score, so we just got to average them out real quick. So 90 plus 93 plus 81, 264 divided by 3. All right, so his mean score for both his quiz as well as his test, I just kept everything the same to keep life easy. And in fact, the performance final, just trying to make the light work even lighter. So I'm going to multiply each of these by the percentage, and I get 39.6 for the raw score, and I get 30.8, and then 88 times 0.05, it should be 4.4. There it is, 4.4. Okay? Now, what grade must George get on the final exam? Now, there is an algebraic formula you can do, but I don't really like using formulas. I like using relationships because students just don't necessarily love, all right? They don't love formulas, they like relationships. So to get his final exam grade, all right, what you have to do is take, and I'm going to put this in parentheses, add in fact, I just take the raw scores, all right, find the raw scores, and divide it. I just do divide because my divide key doesn't look very good. It looks like a slash. And of course, it'd be nice if I spelled it right. Divide by the final exam percentage. Okay? No, I'm sorry. I missed something. So it's the grade he wants. All right. So it's the grade he wants minus the raw scores. And then you divide that by the final exam percentage. Let me make it to where trying to make it to where it all fits on one line. Oh, it did. All right. So in order to get the final exam grade, all right, you have to take the grade he wants, subtract it by the raw scores that he has, and divide that by the final exam percentage. All right. Now, let's do this in red. So the final exam grade, this is what we're looking for. Question. The grade he wants is a 90. Okay. Now we're going to subtract that by all the raw scores. So that means all these numbers added together, we're going to subtract by. All right, so that's 39.6 plus 30.8 plus 4.4, and you get 74.8. That's the first thing we need to do. And then we're going to divide that by the final exam percentage. Now, this is where it gets a little confusing. When I say the final exam percentage, I mean the final exam percentage expressed as a decimal. So I'm going to divide that by 0.15. All right. So 90 minus 74.8 gives me 15.2. Now I'm going to divide that by 0.15. Divide that by 0.15, and your answer rounded will be, it's actually, the answer is 101.333. Repeat. So it rounds to 101. So in order for, what's his name, George, for his grade to mathematically calculate to a 90, he has to make a 101 on a final exam, which a final exam is made out of 100 points. So 101 would be impossible. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was George's teacher, and if he is going into the final exam with an 88, and he makes even like a 100, I'd still probably give him the A, even though mathematically he would not round to an A. All right. All right. Now, next question. Let's go ahead and do this one more time because it might have been a little too fast. So again, you have all the scores. There's a lot of them. We got to find the mean scores. Now, to save a little bit of time, I'm just going to go ahead and give you these answers. So the mean score ends up being 80 for the test, for the quiz, for homework, 190. And then when we multiply by the percentages, that would be a 40, that'd be 11.3. This would be a 5, and this would be a 9. Okay, that's a 9. All right, so what Dave wants, he wants an 88 in the class. I don't know why he's not shooting for an A, but he wants an 88. Who knows? Now, remember the relationship, and that is the grade he wants. The grade he wants. You set that equal to, I'm sorry, I put the wrong number. Sorry, the grade he needs. The grade he needs. You do a little relationship, and that is the grade. And of course, when I say grade he wants, I mean the final exam grade he needs. The grade, the overall grade he wants, minus all the raw scores, RS, and then I'm going to divide that by 0.20 because that is the final exam percentage. So the grade Dave wants is an 88. And I'm going to subtract it by all the raw scores. All right, so 40, 11, 5, and 9. Let's see, 40 plus 11.3 plus, oop, messed up. 40 plus 11.3 plus 14. I believe that is 65.3. And when I do that, so 88 minus 65.3, I get 22.7. I'm going to divide that by 0.20. So when I do that, divide that by 0.20, I get an answer of rounded, 113.5, which means he gets one, basically has to make a 114. Again, if you have something over 100%, the likelihood that is never going to happen. All right, that is never going to happen. So, mathematically speaking, your conclusion would be there is no way that Dave would ever get an 88 in the class because there's no way that you can get 114 on the final exam, especially if the final exam's out of 100 points. All right, so that's everything. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.